Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument. My name is Steve Adelson, and this morning we're going to talk about one of the characters and some of the events that shaped this epic battle. We're going to talk about the warrior chief Gall. But before we do that, we want to tell you where we are this morning as we're filming live on location. We are on the crest of Calhoun Hill, and Calhoun Hill will play a pivotal role in what happened here, in the sense that James Calhoun, Custer's brother-in-law, will dismount and form some skirmish lines here with upwards of 80 to 100 soldiers, and for 40 to 45 minutes he will try to hold warriors back in a desperate attempt to hang on and survive in any event. He will be killed in this fight and be able to be identified only by the gold fillings in his teeth. But before we finish the chapter on Calhoun Hill, I want to focus and go back in time and talk about Gall, this fearsome warrior who would become a dominant force in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. As a young boy, Gall was introduced to this world and shortly discovered that it was a painful and agonizing place for him. At a very young age, he lost two of his parents, and he was orphaned. Sitting Bull put his arm around Gall and began to mentor and tutor him at a young age. And as Gall began to learn the skills of a hunter warrior, he also began to develop a physical stature that dominated all of the other youth in the tribe. By the time he entered his teenage years, he had a massive chest and bulging arms, and he used those physical attributes to make war on Crows and Shoshones and other tribes that participated in intertribal warfare. At the age of 24, already with a growing reputation as a warrior, Gall would go to Fort Buford to trade with his band. And at Fort Buford, another individual who would play a prominent role in Custer's life as a scout, Custer's favorite scout, the scout Bloody Knife. Bloody Knife would hear of Gall's arrival, and he would tell military officers at the post that Gall was a dangerous man, that he'd murdered white people and he needed to be arrested and incarcerated. Because you see, there was bad blood between Bloody Knife and Gall. Gall's existence as a young boy and as a powerful individual, he tended to bully people at times. And he bullied Bloody Knife in war games and other simulations, and pounded on Bloody Knife and tortured it and tormented him to the point where Bloody Knife actually left and went to live with his father amongst his own people. In the end, Bloody Knife never forgot that youthful experience, and so he wanted to punish Gall. The army came out to arrest Gall and began to drag him out of his teepee. Gall resisted, but they threw him on the ground, a dozen soldiers, and they bayoneted him 3 times. The officer looked down upon him and said, "He's dead." But Bloody Knife wanted to make sure the job was finished, so he loaded his shotgun and pointed it at Gall's head as blood ran out of his mouth, cocked the shotgun, and just before he was going to pull the trigger, the officer in charge pushed him back and said, "Leave him alone, he's dead. We don't want to start a riot." It's the end of that exchange, fortunately for Gall, because he lived. He was nursed back to health. An Indian woman who applied healing medicines, and he recovered from his wounds and went on to live in the culture that he existed in, which was a hunter-warrior culture, and he was extremely adept at all of those things. On the day of this battle, June 25th, 1876, Gall is going to arrive in the battle late. And the reason for that tardiness is that he will find out when the First gunshots from Major Reno's attack are launched into the village. Gall will find out that the Arikara scouts have killed his 2 wives and 3 little girls. You can imagine how stunned he was when he found out that information. He said, "It made my heart bad, and I fought back with a hatchet." Gall boiled out of the village with other warriors. He crossed the river at Medicine Tail Coulee. He came up Deep Coulee with a horde of warriors behind him. And if you'll notice today, as our director Woody will pan about this site, it's quiet here right now. But 144 years ago, on the back of this ridge, it was far from quiet. Gunfire, smoke, yelling, screaming, cursing. It was apocalyptic. The assault Gall would bring upon Calhoun Hill will overwhelm 100 soldiers and crush them to death. And Gall will advance to the north through the Keogh sector along with Crazy Horse and White Bull. Eventually, he will get to Last Stand Hill, and he will be one of the warriors that sees the death knell of George Armstrong Custer and 45 men on Last Stand Hill. Gall would leave this battlefield with a great deal of memories. And 10 years later at the reunion, they'll ask him, "Gall, how long did the battle last?" He said, "About as long as it takes for a hungry man to eat his dinner." 6 months after the fight, Gall will go to Canada with Sitting Bull. He'll remain up there for several years trying to exist in harmony with the Canadians and the Canadian government and other tribes that resided there, but food will eventually run out and Gall will return and surrender onto the reservation. Bitterly upset, did not want to surrender, but recognized the futility of further existence in the free way of life, a life that Sitting Bull will continue to pursue until he's all alone. Gall would transition into that reservation life and become a farmer. He will convert to Christianity, and eventually he will become a tribal judge. Unfortunately for Gall, health issues would overcome him. He would gain a substantial amount of weight, approaching 300 pounds, probably suffered from heart disease, diabetes, and other afflictions associated with obesity. He was prescribed some medicine to try to reduce his weight. He drank the whole bottle and died the next day. Gall would be remembered as a warrior primarily for courage and stealth and power. And he would be buried in South Dakota in Episcopalian Cemetery. Gall destroyed Calhoun, where we stand today. Steve Adelson, thank you for watching. Appreciate your comments. Have a good day.